Grab your devices. It's time for another polling question. When was the last time you volunteered at a nonprofit organization in your community? 1, less than 6 months. 2, 6 months to 2 years. 3, more than 2 years. And here's what you said. And now to present the Renewal Award winners, please welcome Atlantic Senior Editor, Ron Brownstein.
Good morning, everybody. I think for starters, I need to have some words with whoever on our staff thought it would be a good idea for me to have to come up directly after that. One more round of applause for Alexis and James. And now for the moment that we're all here for, the announcement of our Renewal Award winners and an opportunity to hear from them. Brought to you by the Atlantic and Allstate in its 4th year, the Renewal Awards is a nationwide competition that recognizes the most innovative grassroots local organizations delivering positive change in their communities. This year's winners were chosen from over 9,000 nominations and were selected by a public voting process that drew nearly 19,000 votes, as well as evaluations by a distinguished group of independent judges. And I'd like to just take a moment to thank our judges for this year's Renewal Awards. They were Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans, Marilyn Strickland, who is the president and CEO of the Seattle Chamber of Commerce and the former mayor of Tacoma, Washington, Mick Cornett, the former mayor of Oklahoma City, Cesar Espinosa, who is the executive director for Families and Their Education, an immigrant rights organization in Houston, Charlie Dent, former Republican member of the House from Pennsylvania, Anne Marie Bourgogne, who is the managing director of social innovation at the Emerson Collective, Kate Knack, who's director of corporate relations at the Allstate Foundation, and 2 of our 2018 winners who served as judges in this year's competition, Melissa Sawyer, co-founder and executive director of the Youth Empowerment Project in New Orleans, who we will hear from in a little while, and Bob Curry, who is the founding president of the Hazleton Integration Project in Pennsylvania. Can we have a quick round of applause for our judges? And now it is my honor to present the winners of the 2019 Renewal Awards.
They tried to tell us that our voices didn't matter,
that we didn't belong.
But thanks to Adelante Mujeres and people like you,
we are rising up.
We start with early childhood education programs, youth services to make sure that young Latina girls are successful in school. And then we're also providing education services to adults.
Whatever you do, you'll see an effect in your life. And that's what we see today. We see Compton being turned around by average, ordinary, everyday people like you and I.
The Compton Initiative is a blessing for our entire school community, our students, our parents, the neighborhood itself.
Looking at the volunteers, they're so young and motivated to change Compton. It's just mind-blowing.
Welcoming the Stranger offers free classes in English, citizenship preparation, and computer skills to adult immigrants and refugees from 100 different countries.
When I found Welcoming the Stranger and joined to the class, I feel that the environment changed and I was like the person I used to be.
I got a chance to see both sides of the spectrum, like what it was like to be unstable and to be living in poverty and to be afraid that I'm a single mom with no income or low income.
For young moms who are experiencing homelessness or really challenging circumstances, I want them to know that there's a place like New Moms that exists to support them.
Now where I feel like I can be a motivation to the moms that come through the program so they can look at me and say, we're the same age, it's possible. It can happen overnight if you stay dedicated.
Part of our mission is to create safe, creative outdoor spaces for youth and their families here in the community.
I
I've learned a lot since I've been here. Farming, healthy food, other cultures, and being able to be myself.
We've done our best to create safe spaces and positive impacts in the lives of our youth and their families. But we're not done yet.
Great groups. Joining me to congratulate the winners, please welcome Elizabeth Brady, the Chief Marketing Officer at Allstate. Hi, Elizabeth. All right, now our winners. From Adelante, Mujeres, please welcome Bridget Cook. Representing New Moms, please welcome Jenna Hania. From the Compton Initiative, Judy Mom. From Welcoming the Stranger, Lois Heist. And from Acta, Verba, Kelly Carlisle. All right. The best part about being the moderator is you know where to sit. It's just the one place that's left. Just don't sit on anybody's lap is the first instruction. So the video gave a little hint of this, but all of your organizations are doing more now than when you started. In some cases, significantly more than when you started. And I'm interested if you could explain a little about the process of that growth and how your organizations have evolved in response to the needs of the people you're working with. Bridget, and we want to start with you.
Sure. Well, it's great to be here with all of you. So really appreciate your presence today. So Adelante Mujeres means women rise up in Spanish. And we are working to build a more just society by creating Latina leaders. And we started with 2 programs in 2002, serving about 100 people a year, and we're now serving over 8,000 people a year with 12 programs. And the impetus for all of these programs really has come from the community. I think as awardees up here, we all know that we need to pay attention to the zeitgeist, to the spirit of the moment, and that really means listening to both the needs and the aspirations of our communities. So briefly, I'll just tell a quick little story, if I may, that kind of capsulizes a lot of the work that we do. So I'll tell you a story about Gabriela, an immigrant woman from Chiapas, Mexico, and south of Mexico, and grew up in a poor family and saw the family's livelihood being devastated by NAFTA. She married relatively early and had 2 children, but the relationship was abusive, so she moved back home, felt she was a burden to her family, so made the journey to come to the United States. And to get across the border, she risked herself, her own life, and the lives of her children. She handed her children over to strangers, begging them to please care for what was most precious to her in her life. And she herself crawled into the back of an emptied out large TV. This was clearly before flat screens. And that TV then was screwed shut in the back. She was inside of a box that was taped, was sealed shut. There were other immigrants in a similar situation of her, as well as real TVs. And they spent a number of hours getting across the border in Sonora, Mexico border. So that kind of risk, I think, really speaks to what pushes people or what people are willing to take on to seek a better life for themselves and their families. When she came to Oregon, she discovered Adelante Mujeres and became involved in our adult education program and was able to enroll her children in our early childhood education program, so they were able to be learning together. But during that process, she told me that, realmente, Bridget, yo quiero trabajar por mí misma, that I really want to work for myself. So then we were able to involve her in a small business program that we started, and she developed that confidence to start her own cleaning business. By having her own business, she was able to avoid using toxic chemicals and work a schedule that really fit with her family's needs. As her children grew, she enrolled her 2 daughters in our Chicas Youth Development Program, where we serve over 600 girls in 24 different schools, preparing those girls to be successful in college. Graduate from high school, we have a 100% graduation record. from high school and a 95% college enrollment, which we're very, very proud of because that's unique for the Latino community. During her period when she was with Chicas, she volunteered at our farmers market. Her father also took our small business course and started his own business. So you can see that this trajectory of families that come to the U.S. have such determination. They've lived through so much, and what they really just need is those opportunities to see their dreams fulfilled. And so we listen carefully to them, and then we develop the programming that really responds to their needs.
Jenna, thank you. Jenna, I mean, New Moms started, but 35 years ago, a single individual operating from the trunk of her car.
Right.
And you have obviously enormously diversified and expanded. So talk a little bit about that trajectory.
That's right. So our founder, Ellen, she saw adolescent moms who were homeless in her community, and she just couldn't let that go. So she put diapers, formula, wipes in the trunk of her car, and when she would encounter a young mom on the streets, she would stop and supply them with these basic needs, but begin those relationships that helped her understand what the root issues were, what poverty was doing to these young families, and how 2 generations of youth needed that support so that their futures could be different than what poverty was dictating it was right now. So Ellen, you know, her passion, but really a community that surrounded her drive. She would say, even today, this was not hers, but it was a calling to share with the community to address this issue. So as she grew, she found young moms in homes where they were overwhelmed with parenting, and began visiting moms and helping them learn parenting skills and really face the sacred call of being a parent. And found that housing was a great need, and you know, as the housing systems were developing in urban centers, the city of Chicago handed us a contract to do housing for this population, just trying to address this issue of housing that we were seeing being faced across the nation back in the 80s. So New Moms has in some ways evolved as different systems and structures have evolved in our cities, but also with this clear focus on our mission of surrounding young moms and their families with all they need to transform their lives. And for us, that looks like today housing, job training, a variety of family supports, doula services, helping to equip young moms even before they give birth so that they're ready to be parents and to, you know, face all of the excitements and challenges that come with parenting. But we really see our work as providing a menu of services to meet moms where they are and make sure that they're equipped to build strong families.
Can I follow up? Because in addition to all the services that you provide, another thing you're doing is you're operating a business now.
That's right.
A pretty substantial business. And talk a little bit about why you added that component and how it fits into your overall program.
That's right. So our job training program is a 16-week program where moms develop professional skills, but they also get paid hands-on job training at our social enterprise candle company called Bright Endeavors. So we sell our candles across the nation and Whole Foods across the Midwest, and all of the proceeds of our candle sales go right back into equipping more moms in job skills and in all of the different services that we provide. You know, as we've become a more complex organization providing these variety of services, we've also had to become more sophisticated in how we sustain that work. And one of those ways that we've done that is creating this additional revenue source that is both sustaining for our organization, but also supports our overall mission of ensuring that we are training young moms well for the workforce. So adding this, we added Bright Endeavors to our job training program about 10 years ago, and it has been a transformative aspect of our job training program. Because we're seeing moms see that they can add value to the workforce, and when they leave our program, they're feeling confident and competent to access the amazing access opportunities in the workforce, but it's also creating that sustainability for us to keep getting better at our work.
Thank you, Judy. Talk a little bit about the Compton Initiative and how it has evolved over time.
Absolutely. The Compton Initiative was founded in 2006 in Compton. Actually, in 2005, it was one of the kind of most hurtful kind of times in Compton with high violence, high homicide rates in 2005. So in 2006, with that kind of calling, we had the heart to start up the Compton Initiative, and we started, essentially, it was started with the heart and the mission to, our slogan is just do good, hashtag just do good in Compton, organizing volunteers to do big beautification days in Compton. We started back in 2006 with just 100 volunteers. Fast forward 13 years now, 2019, we're mobilizing about 2,000 volunteers for one single day. With 2,000 volunteers, we're able to send them out to 40 different beautification work sites, is what we call them, project sites. Volunteers are painting homes, schools, churches, murals, doing block cleanups, planting gardens, painting over graffiti, cleaning up alleys. We've just been seeing that there's lots of good-hearted volunteers who just want to just do good. And I think before the Compton Initiative existed, that will and that heart to do good was always there. It's just they didn't really have the logistics, the model, the medium to really volunteer and make it easy for them to do it. So
one distinctive aspect of your model is like, you know, all at once, kind of a mega bomb of, of activity, 4 times a year.
4 times a year.
Why that approach as opposed to, you know, kind of just spacing it out every weekend all year? What's the theory behind bringing larger numbers together fewer times?
Unification. Unification is definitely our heart. Mobilizing 2,000 makes a statement. Makes a statement of, man, we're in it together. We're in it together with Compton. And, you know, the other exciting thing about the Compton Initiative is 2,000 volunteers. That's from all over Southern California. We're having lots of college students, lots of fraternities, lots of sororities, service clubs, companies. They're just all excited to come join in together to help support awesome nonprofits, awesome neighborhood leaders, awesome faith-based leaders, school-based leaders. Anybody that's willing to do good in Compton, we're able to help facilitate and empower.
I'm going to come back to that connection in a minute. But Lois, Welcoming the Stranger started with one person teaching a class, I believe, to 8 people, one minister.
Yes.
And now it's obviously much bigger. Talk a little bit about the trajectory of your group.
Well, Reverend Sturgis Poorman founded Welcoming the Stranger 20 years ago after serving in Zimbabwe, teaching English there, and wanted to come back home and continue teaching English.
And you're in Bucks County, right? Right outside of Philadelphia?
Bucks County, right outside of Philadelphia, adjacent to Philadelphia. Not too far from here, so kind of lucky that way. So anyway, he came back and connected with an outreach program and was able to set up his class with 8 students, and quickly there were more and more students coming. And after assessing needs, it was determined that another skill set that people needed was computer classes. So we increased our offerings beyond just English language classes to computer classes. And then one of the teachers actually in the program had a wife from Malaysia who had just been through the citizenship process. And so it's a rigorous process if you're familiar with it. And so it was decided that we could add a citizenship prep program too. So from 8 students, we've evolved to over 20 years having served more than 4,000 students from more than 100 countries. And we run 10 to 15 sites with about 300 students per session. And so it's taken on a life of its own. Our classes are typically in houses of worship or in public community centers, that sort of thing, because we have to find spaces that we don't need to rent. And, we have teams of teachers. We usually have a lead teacher and then other teachers on the team, so it kind of cycles through. And I know one of the questions that we get is, what kind of curriculum do you use? We really don't have a curriculum. We really are responsive to our student needs, depending on the class. And our students are very forthright. And one of my students said, I need to make small talk. When I go to the bus stop, all the other moms are there and they're talking, and I don't know how to initiate a conversation. So we try to be practical. We try to be helpful. Another person said, my husband's boss has lost a family member and he's going to the funeral. They needed to be walked through. What does it mean to go to a funeral in the United States, and what are the expectations, and what shouldn't you say and what shouldn't you do? So we role-played that. Things that are really practical, I think, is what we focus on. And I think in summary, the biggest thing, really, well beyond teaching language and computers and citizenship prep classes, is the sense of community that we build. Because suddenly people are in a place where maybe, this person's from Sri Lanka and this person's from Belarus, but the experiences that they're having are very common. So to have a context and to have people to socialize with outside of class who have common experience is a beautiful thing.
I was going to ask about that because you all deal with different, specific actions and challenges that people face. But a theme running through all of your organizations, Kelly, as well, is building community and dealing and helping to break down barriers that are keeping communities isolated. You are operating adjacent to one of the most dynamic economies in the history of the world. A few miles away in San Francisco in Silicon Valley, some people have said it is the greatest single accumulation of wealth in human history. And yet you are 10 miles away, 15 miles away, and for many of the kids you're working with, that might as well be happening on Mars.
Yeah. Absolutely. So instead of focusing on, kind of what the community lacks, what Silicon Valley has that East Oakland doesn't have, we focus on what we as individuals and as a community can build together. We make sure that, all of our programs are culturally relevant, that the folks that we have as our staff and really folks that interact with our youth reflect the community that we serve. So we have the 3 farms in the city of Oakland that are run by youth age 5 to 15. The kids plant, harvest, and sell the produce that we grow. 100% of those dollars are placed into individual savings accounts for their higher education, their educational goals. So when we have guest speakers and when we have our camp counselors and program managers and directors, we make sure that the kids can really see themselves in those positions. As my colleague Aya said last night, the pie in the sky, the ideal is not necessarily that we're building more farmers. What we're hoping for is that we're building, again, bridges, within the community, that we're building a stronger community, and that, as our kids grow up, they can see themselves out in the world doing both non-traditional and traditional jobs that they don't typically see themselves in.
So I was going to ask you, out of all the needs in the community, and you lived as a young child in Oakland for a time and have come back after living in many other places. What made you focus on agriculture as kind of a window or a leverage point to deal with some of the larger challenges facing the community?
Sure. So I'd say that's a 2-part question. By complete accident, I discovered that food was grown, that it needed soil and sun. Yeah, water, Yeah. It was unexpected. Was shocked. And so as like a personal challenge, I bought a plant and tried to grow it, and it grew. And it was like, as I was explaining to, some of our, the other awardees this morning, it was like, I just entered Hogwarts, this is magic. I can do this by myself with no knowledge. I can just pour the water in and it does this thing. And I wanted to share that with youth. With everyone, I literally went around Oakland hey, did you know the flowers turn into fruit? It was really exciting. And then the second part was, I'm a mom, and, I'm also former military. And so, when I had my daughter, I was kind of treating her like another duty, I've got to feed her, I got to water her, I got to, get her trained up, I didn't really have this feeling of nurturing or cultivation. When I learned that food was grown, when I discovered it, I started making parallels to how not only I treat my daughter, but also how we treat children in this country in general, right? The idea that I, Kelly, have the power and the duty to plant this lemon tree, to nurture it, to protect it, to prune it in just the right way, started to translate to me how I was raising my daughter and how we, as a society, should be raising our children. We have to have this protectiveness and this idea that we're cultivating and raising our youth to live their best lives, their best, most productive, most, amazing lives, and give them their best chance at life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to bring in the audience for a couple of questions in a minute, but I just want to ask you, all of you are working with populations that have been either economically marginalized or politically targeted in a very polarized period in American history. And Lois, your colleague Meg, who, when we spoke the other day, was talking about that many of the immigrant families that you work with have felt less welcome in the last few years than they did when they first arrived. On the other hand, as you mentioned, you have more volunteers lined up than you can, and I'm interested in your feeling about how this period of political tension and polarization is affecting what you do, and maybe everyone could give a quick thought on that.
Yeah, clearly our students do report back that they hear comments like, you need to learn to speak English first, or you need to go back where you came from, which we didn't used to hear, so we're hearing that now. I mean, I certainly think that there is that theme that we're dealing with in our culture, but the counter theme is that we have a richness of volunteers. We can hardly find enough places to put the volunteers that call and say, I want to help. What can I do to help? And I think that's really, really a refreshing thing that we look at as
and they're looking to help specifically in response to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Bridget, what about in semi-rural Oregon?
Right. Yeah, I don't think we can't overestimate the challenges that the immigrant community and communities of color are facing these days. And I could say similarly for women, I think we all thought, or some people thought before 2015, 2016, that we were in a post-feminist world. And that's become very clear, likewise, that we're not. And so for women immigrants, the burden is double. But so it's been really important to create a true space of liberation for the women and their families who come to our program, so that they know that they're welcome, they know they're cared for, they know we want them there, they know that all of our staff, our staff is 87% immigrant themselves, and so there's a clear sense that we're with you in this process. And then people want to be part of a movement that is really responding to the issues of the time. And so I think seeing how important it is that we continue to empower our young girls and that we really do put out the welcome mat for immigrants is resonated a lot with our funders as well as with the government entities that we work with.
Let's see if we can get one question in from the audience. You have a question over here, I think.
I'm impressed by how much volunteerism is important to each of your organizations.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us in a percentage, what percentage of your programs are run by volunteers versus paid staff?
I'll start.
Yeah.
Because we're really probably the smallest of all these groups up here. We have one executive director, one part-time administrative assistant, a couple of teachers that have some hourly compensation, but by and large, all of our classes are run completely by volunteers. All of our program is.
Same here in Compton. With the Compton Initiative, I'm the only full-time person. We have 2 part-time operations assistants, and everybody else that serve as a volunteer site leader for my 40 beautification sites, they're all volunteers. And I have full-time, retired, good-hearted volunteers that manage our warehouse, where we supply this like our own personal storehouse of numerous supplies to do all of our painting projects. And we have a full-time volunteer paint mixer as well that we're really grateful for. These, yeah.
Jenna? Did you want to?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so none of our programs are run by volunteers, but we could not do our programming as well as we do without the support of volunteers, whether that's helping to provide emergency services, supplies like diapers and formulas. All of that comes to us because volunteers take on being ambassadors of our mission and calling our community forth to support moms and people in the community who are running out of those basic supplies for their kids. The skills of volunteers support us in our job training program, in interviewing, developing interviewing skills and things like that. Everything we do is reinforced by the volunteer workforce. And we definitely could not be excellent in our work without that support.
think we have to leave it there. Would you join me again in thanking our terrific 2019 Renewal Award winners?
Thank you.
Thank you.